Cybersecurity is not all technical. There's components to being secure that include privacy, data, and records management.
Minimize legal risk. We enhance cyber maturity by reducing our footprint. If there's less to protect, there's less to lose. AI. Asking them specific questions. What is your intention of using this AI? What is the output?
One of the areas that we're continually striving to expand on is not having multiple different assessments. Hi, welcome to our session. My name's Sharon, and this is my colleague Christine, and we both work at WestJet in the Governance, Risk and Compliance team, and wanted to talk to you today about the synergy of privacy and records management. And because Christine and I are both on the same team, we have, over the past couple of years, been able to figure out, with Christine and I working together, we found some really efficient ways to enable the business and to help them with the privacy and records management. And we have found that collaboration between us really ensures that we're not asking the same questions to business. There's lots of opportunity to maximize the conversations across. We minimize the supposed pain that GRC and assessments cause the business, and we also help to inspire the business to take ownership of the privacy through record keeping practices. So we like to think that we are changing the narrative from being the big bad wolf and to the area that everybody we always say no you cannot do, to yes you can. So our topics today, as we've got here, are just to talk about privacy and records management, and that we want to get across to everybody that, you know, cybersecurity is not all technical. There's components to being secure that include privacy, data, and records management. And we like to think of ourselves as the soft skills of cybersecurity.
For that intro, Sharon, I'd just like to share a little bit about the topics that I'll be touching on today too. So through our presentation today, Sharon and I are going to speak about how we work together to create synergy, how we volley back and forth, working with the business, and ultimately we both represent the same things by making sure that our record keeping practices are up to snuff. We ultimately make sure that we are compliant with privacy regulation. And then we happened to have a really great friendship that came out of this wonderful working arrangement as well. So with that, we'll get started. Okay, so bridging records management and privacy. I'm going to start this topic by sharing that I tend to use record management and data governance interchangeably. In this day and age, most of our information is digital, and most of it can easily translate into a paper copy. So I have kind of up-leveled my thinking into it is always digital, and we are always working to protect that digital information. Ultimately, I believe that record-keeping practices are how we will prove our compliance with privacy. At WestJet, the records management policy and the retention policy define our mandatory requirements for capturing information to do our business. Ultimately, business processes that are not compliant with those policies are not compliant with privacy regulation. And we want to work with business to understand that we trust that you have the processes to collect the information. We trust you there. Where we want to see some accountability and some action is in the review, the culling, and the destruction of that information on a regular basis. we don't exactly have the trust that all of our business units are good housekeepers. And so we're there to help and point out where they need to go clean. By working on this destroy first approach, we minimize legal risk. We enhance cyber maturity by reducing our footprint. If there's less to protect, there's less to lose. Implementing effective record-keeping practices empowers employees to recognize personal information and particularly PII, personally identifiable information. Collaboration on the templates that privacy uses allows us to align and to refer back and forth. Sharon, did you have anything you wanted to add here?
Yep, I just wanted to follow up when you were talking about the retention and deletion process and procedures and the schedules that we have in place. When we're looking at the privacy impact assessments, it's a great opportunity for us to be able to reference these procedures that we have around the retention and the deletion and the processes to support the business in doing those reviews and having those reviews and understanding our policies and procedures on the retention and the deletion as part of the assessment process. So one of the things that we do is I have questions in the privacy assessments that talk about, have you confirmed the retention period for the PII that's being processed? Do you have procedures in place for when you reach that retention period and you need to delete those documents and the data? Is AI being used to process? Has a security assessment been completed? And this allows me to look at and to bring Christine in, and or the other areas, if it's a vendor risk assessment needs to be done or a security risk assessment, because I've identified some gaps of where it is that potentially the business has not gone through and done all of the assessments that need to be done, or they haven't realized an assessment needs to be done beyond the privacy assessment. And this leads to an opportunity for us to collaborate, because the same thing will happen from the team that's doing the vendor risk assessment. They will also ask a couple of questions from a privacy lens, and it will identify, well, have you done the privacy assessment? Oh, if not, you need to do the privacy assessment, and from the security side also. So that opportunity to collaborate across the assessments, because we ask some questions and we know that question has been asked or not asked. So again, we're trying to minimize the duplication, but at the same time ensure that if there is a gap to having that process been completed, we have completed the process. And so that brings me into how the data management supports our privacy principles. And in today's age, and I don't think our business is any different, there's not enough people for all of the work that needs to be done. So we need to make sure that we're looking at things with a lens from the risk side. So again, with that, it's not possible to do a DPIA on every single implementation or project that's being done. We need to be able to identify where the risk is and focus on those high risk areas. And so in order to do that, there's a lot of value and opportunity to have an informal engagement, let's say, or an informal conversation. If the business knows that they can come and talk to us and that we can have a conversation, and if we identify that ask or that project or that implementation is a lower risk, we don't need to go back and do a formal assessment. It's going to be cumbersome for the business and it's cumbersome for us. So being able to have that conversation, and if that conversation is enough, it becomes a teachable moment. It also allows them to know that we are not trying to stop them from doing things. We're actually enabling them because the conversation is enough. So, and always you remember that as we're going through and doing these, we can always go back and audit on a risk assessment that we've deemed low, just to make sure they're complying, as well as if it's a moderate. So it's important to support the business that way by doing what we can to help them think that the process is easy. And again, when we're talking and having these these conversations, it helps us to understand the business better, and that allows us to talk to them about their responsibility and understanding that they are, as the process owner, accountable for the PII data that's being used. That it's not the IT team, it's not the privacy team, it's not the GRC team. We're there to coach and to guide and to help them, but they need to be able to understand and talk to the fact that they are the accountable party. So one of the questions that I often ask is, can you defend this as the business, as the process owner? Can you defend this in 2, 3, or 5 years? This DPIA that we're doing, this assessment we're doing, is it detailed enough to support that? Because in 3 years, you're going to be busy doing other things as a business, and you need to come back, and this is your document to be able to show that you've done it. And so you need to sign off on that. And so again, it comes back to teachable moments, going through the DPIA. It's an opportunity to train on the responsibility. It's an opportunity to review all stages of the processing. So the collection and the use, but also back to the retention and the deletion, that they understand and that they are aware it's their responsibility. Once they've defined that retention period, at the end of that retention period, they are deleting. And then other controls potentially that need to be put in place around access controls and the sharing of the data. And reminding them that if we don't need to collect the data, we shouldn't collect it. Data minimization, we don't have to manage and we don't have to protect what we do not collect. So often want to make sure that the business units have the practices in place to do the reviews for the retention and deletion as part of their business as usual activity. So encouraging them to work with records management resources to develop and implement those policies and procedures at the higher business level, not at a project level. If we can bring things up that it's part of what they do as their business, not because I have to do this for this project, I have to do this for this project, then they're going to comply better and they're going to understand better. So it's really important, again, to be talking up at that processing level, at that higher level, and make sure that they are engaged and bringing that in as a business as usual activity. Make it about the business unit and their use and requirements for that data and the PII processing that they're doing. Anything to add to that, Christine?
Yeah, a few things. You raise a really good point about encouraging the use of the assessment templates. And in my experience, I have found it's an empowerment issue. A lot of individual contributors in a very niche or specific business unit that is focused on sales or focused on collecting a certain type of information does not realize that the DPIA assessment template is for them.
Mm-hmm.
They think it's for someone else. So often it's a matter of empowering the person, the individual that I am speaking with, to read a policy, read a procedure, bust out a template, and just use it. Who was it? Miss Frizzle? Make mistakes, get messy. I truly do believe that that is something that, as a records and information management advisor, I advise people to do regularly. Whatever you want to do, that's cool. I support you, but make sure it's documented. Make sure you have a calendar invitation at least once a year to review all of your file repositories from the date view and get rid of what is too old. And to the point that you were making on the collection, and is this defensible 3 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now? The longer that view is, the less control we have over the future us. And in most cases, it's not us. It's future people. Is the business going to look the same? Are they going to know 10 years into the future what we know now? And what do we know now that we can document in an SOP and help make our lives easier in the future? If we know that 3 years from now, we don't need the PII of 3,000 guests, well, then let's automate that destruction today. And then we can work backwards and place a hold where necessary. So those are the thoughts that I have on how data management, can support privacy principles. Again, I want to take this over to the physical records component as well and remind people that most of our systems can translate and print this information out. And if there is any business unit that has a practice of sending boxes of records off to Iron Mountain or another storage facility, those also require protection. Those also need to be reviewed, recalled, and destroyed regularly.
Correct. And just before we go on, I also want to add just on this point that what we're talking about here for that retention and that deletion isn't just internally, that there's also the requirement with a vendor or a service provider or partner. So again, one of the things that Christine and I do, and we try very hard to ensure that when we're talking with the business, we're talking not just internally, but also with the vendor, but we're doing it together. So the same message is being provided to the business, whether we're talking in one conversation together or we're talking separately to the business because they have questions. And I've engaged Christine to have Christine talk to them. And again, with the vendor, that the business is still responsible for that data being over on the vendor side. So we have to make sure that the business understands the procedures and the processes that we use internally that we've just talked about, that they're asking the question to the vendor or the partner or the service provider. And again, going back to, the DPIA, we also ask that on there. It's not just that internal question. It's, have you talked to the vendor? How long is the vendor keeping that data? Have you gone through? Is it part of the, are they aligned to the contractual terms that because we put in contractual terms of the retention and the deletion of the data, as well as our retention schedule. We then talk about, do they have a process in place? Have they provided us a copy of their process? And if they don't, are they going to put a process in place? Because the risk is higher if they hold on to our data and they hold on to it indefinitely. And there's no reason, as Christine had said, for it to be held that long. So it's what are they doing on their side and ensuring that the business, again, understands that accountability and that responsibility, but they're empowered to talk to the vendor and to talk to that service provider to tell them that they must align with our procedures and process, or they must have procedures and processes in place that the business can look at, that the business can get a copy of, that the business can then call them on. So when we're doing this annual review as a business, we don't just look internally. We then ask our vendors, can you confirm that you have deleted those records that have come up, the retention period has ended? And we can get that. And again, from my side with the assessment and with Christine, with us going through that, that's one of the things that we say, we could audit you on this. And again, being transparent and upfront, audit isn't a bad thing. Audit's a good thing. But knowing that the business could be asked those questions helps empower them to be able to go to the vendor and say, no, you must do this because, I'm accountable for that against the business as well. So it's important that it's both an internal and an external review and process that's being done.
Absolutely. Great point. Yeah. Okay. One last slide here to touch on. So we've spoken to great detail about the importance of empowering and informing the business of their role in this story of security of our corporation's information. But engagement with that business is only part of the story. Once we've concluded our work on the DPIA, trained the business, ensured that there are processes documented, we collaborate with our own cyber colleagues. Lately, I've been collaborating with security engineering on configuring our classification our classification tool to recognize proper metadata according to our sensitivity levels. So the standard sensitivity labels are on the slide: confidential being the most sensitive, all the way to public information that is encouraged to be shared and is necessary in order to grow the company. Having a classification tool identify those records in many different formats is a lot easier said than done. So it tends to take revisions and a very specific effort in recognizing what is our most significant information type that we need to protect and who has the most frequent access to it. Moving on from there, we also collaborate with security operations. So where we have DLP and CASB technologies that are automating the security of our information, we equally have logs that are generating and telling a story of what is happening. So as records and information management advisor, I collaborate with SecOps on what are those logs telling us. Is there a storyline of a business over here has a lot of immature processes and they are a frequent flyer on our scene log, and we need to do something about it? What can we do to train them to help them identify the sensitive information that is being sent in inappropriate channels? Or what can we as IT do to provide them with a better tool? Further to that, sometimes we just need to tailor those DLP alerts to reduce the noise, to stop tracking something until we can figure it out. So again, the name of the game is collaboration. Similarly, we've also modified our DPIA and have been speaking with our business units about AI, asking them specific questions. What is your intention of using this AI? What is the output? There's a difference between AI generating a dashboard that will enable a person to have quicker access to information to make informed decisions versus allowing a bot to do what a human should otherwise be doing. So by asking more detailed questions, providing more informed guidance to the business, and then collaborating within our own cyber colleagues, we are advancing the maturity of our cybersecurity posture.
And again, I would just like to add on that when we talk with the DPIA is one of the areas that we're continually striving to expand on is not having multiple different assessments. So as Christine had mentioned about adding some of the AI questions in, we also ensure that we have some questions on other areas, and then we share that DPIA output with the different areas. So Christine, for example, would get a copy of the output as well as our security teams, so that again, we are sharing, but they also see the data and they see the answers, and then we don't have to ask the question multiple times. They know that we ask certain questions. We collect those answers. They see the DPIA, so they know where that answer sits, and then if needed, they can go and they can ask further questions, or we can engage and bring them in to the conversation with us, with the business, where needed. So again, talking about, as I had said, like being the coach, we are in a really good position that we talk with a lot of the different areas of the business, and we see, so we can use that as the opportunity to engage a lot of different areas within the cybersecurity area to bring in the conversations, not all at a technical level. Like I'd said, with being kind of the soft skills, having the conversations with the business at a level that they understand, to bring those questions out and to get the information that's needed to create teachable moments for them, and to also do that ongoing expansion of knowledge to bring them into what is the best thing that they should be doing and what they are required to do and what they are responsible to do, but doing it in such a way that over time they know the answers, so they don't have to ask the questions, and they're coming to us more from a guidance perspective than not knowing how to do something or being afraid to talk to us. They're bringing things forward, and then we're able to work with them and talk with the business because they know we're engaged together. They know they can ask me a question, and I'm going to bring Christine in. I'm going to bring the other cybersecurity teams in, or the vendor risk. We're going to work together to ensure that they're getting the answers they need to enable them to move forward and to grow the business, with us trying to champion them as opposed to being that roadblock.
Yeah, good point. I think that some of the most successful engagements that I've ever had is when the business was having a less than ideal interaction with a vendor and the business needed support. So then I was able to show up just as an advisor in my domain of information governance and advocate. And it was an uncomfortable conversation. This was a vendor that was not prepared, did not have a script, and nor a policy or a position that enables the deletion of data. And the vendor was challenging me personally, Christine, why would you want to do this? And I had to verbatim speak to our policy. We have a retention schedule that declares we require this information for 3 years max. And now that we've been in a relationship for 5 years, I know you have 2 years worth of data that most likely is over retained, right? So, and it was several sessions of these meetings. Ultimately, it was a successful outcome. We did get the deletion that we needed. We did have to submit a ticket. And ultimately, on our side, we had an SOP to update that says, hey, we have to submit a ticket to this location annually if we want to have this information deleted. So lots of lessons to be learned. Again, great opportunities, though, that come from challenging circumstances. And a little good humor always helps.
Yes, agree. Does anybody have any questions? Are there any questions people want to ask on anything we've talked about? We have a few minutes left. I think we have 3 or 4 minutes left. Happy to answer questions. Well, I would like to take the opportunity. We'll stay on for the full time, obviously, but want to thank everybody for attending. Thank you, CyberX, for the opportunity to speak. And I would like to thank Christine also for talking with me on this subject and speaking with all of you.
Yeah, I would like to echo those sentiments. Great day of listening to 3 different tracks filled with valuable information. I'm glad that these sessions are recorded because I know that I missed quite a bit. And I've really enjoyed listening to the expertise from across the world. What an incredible experience. Sharon, I'm wondering if you have any specific examples or use cases that you can speak to from your experience with the last 2 minutes that we have here. Any horror stories or funny stories that you wanted to share with our audience?
Well, I can tell you, the DPIAs or the PIAs doing the privacy assessments is continuous improvement. And as the business and as your company matures, there's opportunity to mature your DPIA and your privacy assessment. I can certainly say that we have gone through a number of iterations of our DPIAs. We started as a Word document, then we moved to a 6-tab Excel document, and we have recently moved again to an Excel document, but it's only 1 tab long. It's only 1 tab and it's 15 questions long that allows us to quickly identify risk and focus on those high risk areas and the assessments that are high risk that we need to focus on. And then we are able to audit on what we've deemed as a low risk assessment or a moderate risk assessment after the fact, but the business can move forward. We don't stop the business from moving on with implementations because we are able to spend our energies on those areas where there's high risk, where we need to slow the business down.
Yeah, that's a good point. I forgot about the evolution that DPIA has been on over, 7 years?
It's seen as a very happy moment when the business goes to do the DPIA that was 6 tabs long and suddenly sees the DPIA is now only 1 tab and 15 questions. Opportunity for the business to want to engage with us because the process seems less onerous to them as they see that we are listening when they say it's so hard to do this, that we are trying to improve the processes, that we need to engage with them.
Reduce the workload. Great point, Sharon.
Yes.
Great. Well, thank you so much, everyone.
Yeah. Yes, thank you very much.